I'm here to talk a little bit in terms of continuing the discussion around Track D and education, and also to try to bridge the gap a little bit between theory and practice. So what we're talking about in particular, the previous conversations and Michael and Kimberly really doing a great job of an example of what could occur in a classroom. And in this particular case, I represent K-12 education, or in my particular case at Mid-Pacific Institute, preschool through 12th grade education. So for those of you who have not been to Hawaii, this is my high school right here. I get to work in a place that looks like that. It's a little warmer than this room, so we can all just feel a little more Hawaiian at the moment.
Next meeting is there?
The next meeting, yes, exactly. We'll have to all convene in Hawaii. And so today I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. Ben asked me to introduce the school itself. We've been introduced to our respective schools and organizations and groups, and then to talk a little bit about how the connection to human energy might occur. So in particular, we've heard, again, the difference between theory and practice. We've heard about the why and the importance of talking about the what is the noosphere. But today, this is a little bit of an introduction to one how. How might we amplify this particular voice? So at Mid-Pacific Institute, by way of quick background, we were established on the current property in 1908. And it actually came together from two different schools, the Kawaiau Seminary for Girls, for Hawaiian girls of Hawaiian descent, and also the Mills Institute for Boys, which was opened specifically to give the sons of agricultural workers from Korea, Japan, and China the ability to explore who they were through education and build a better life. We are currently about 1,400 students, one campus, preschool starting at age 3, and then we go all the way up through high school. As just a foundation of who Mid-Pacific is, we approach learning very specifically through deeper learning. And that aspect of deeper learning is to really find the core junction between mastery, creativity, and identity, which is noospheric in a way. That ultimately what we're talking about is understanding not only how to accept knowledge, but how to apply it. How can you master it? How can we as Mid-Pacific Institute go out of our way to increase your ability to find creativity in what you do? The educational industry, if we call it an industry, is really good at the K-12 level of tamping down creativity and saying you are right or you are wrong, as though there were no in between. And deeper learning is about finding another creative way to express who you are, express your knowledge in the way that you do, and more importantly, that identity piece, to know yourself well enough that you know how to interact with other individuals. Again, another small group, noospheric kind of methodology. We understand as well that not only the arts, but technology are a huge part of what we do. And so we have a driving question for our tech vision, and that is, how can technology enhance the human experience and not drive it? It's not about technology as the new shiny thing and the new shiny tool. It is literally about every single tool that is technological and how we can bring our local communities together, our global communities together, but always for a better day. So how did I get involved in all of this? I will say I feel slightly, affirmed, I would say, in italics with an asterisk, to have coined the phrase to be kasirid. I was walking in the kitchen one day and speaking with my wife, and she was saying that I had to apologize first because I had, in a conversation with Ben, said, my wife Leslie does these things. And then one day, Leslie in our kitchen is saying, I talked to Ben Kasira and I think I'm working with him now. So we have been Kasirid, right? So it all started, honestly, I watched a TED Talk back in 2011. I called Liz Lee, who's at the back of the room at SciArc, and said, hey, I'm a superintendent in California. I think that LiDAR scanning can be done with teenagers. Pregnant pause on the other end of the line. are you sure? And we had this great conversation. So after a good conversation with Ben, we became, I'm sure, the first high school in the United States, if not the world, to be using 3D LiDAR scanning for historical preservation. And this is a picture back in 2012. That's me. It feels longer than 100 years ago, but Chip Fanenga, an amazing, willing teacher who loved science and wanted to try something new, and Justin Barton, who was one of the first folks at SCI-Arc who was going out and helping schools become, entities become SCI-Arc tech centers. So then, fast forward, and I got a call from Ben on the flip side, calling me instead, hey, you do some pretty cool things. Would you mind being part of Human Energy? So the Ben effect from that was me learning as an individual. I can call somebody from a TED Talk. So we're no longer anonymous because the call comes back. I can break a barrier and pull amazing technology and put it in the hands of teenagers. And at the time, we're talking $60,000 worth of equipment in a 16-year-old's hands with full trust. All we do is say, here's how, but more importantly, here's why, right? Which is part of what we're talking about here with the noosphere. Why are we talking about this? How do we get this across? And as a result, now at Mid-Pacific Institute, we built an immersive technology program that is the only kind of program like it in the United States. Microsoft wrote a white paper that featured the school when it came to immersive tech and education. We've won some awards. The idea is to put technology in the hands of students, but to do it in such a way that they tell stories, they connect with other individuals, they realize they have a connection and a purpose and an impact on not only their own community, but communities around the world. And we find ways of making those connections. The student you saw at the very end there, Michaela, so she was in a motion capture suit and she was dancing. The whole point of that was a collaboration between, so she's a dancer, between our technology department, between our music department, between our animation department, all in one school because she wanted to be a dancer. She loved technology. What did she want to do? She wanted to figure out a way in New York how to dance on the streets of New York, but she was not allowed to. You can't dance ballet in subway without anybody bumping into you. So she created a virtual environment. We went and 3D scanned a couple of pieces of New York. We brought those and rendered them into a virtual environment. So she did this a lot by herself. And then she choreographed her own dance using 6 Degrees of Freedom in virtual reality and placed herself in the subway, placed herself on Broadway, placed herself in these places, and then went on to college. And I just read that her professor right now, she's a junior, just won a massive grant to bring immersive technology and dance together. So the professor is being lauded, but I think we all know where the idea came from, right? So isn't this a noospheric kind of thing, right? How one influences the other, but that spark actually turns into this amazing thing. So that's a little bit about the school. We refer to our strategic plan, which is really a framework as aspirations. And the main part of that is to really look at how we are seriously redefining the learning ecosystem. And I mean the learning ecosystem. Where does learning occur? With whom does it occur? How does it occur? When does it occur? Does it have to be me standing and doing exactly what we don't do at my school, which is standing and delivering? Do we do it together? And so part of that is a first recognition that there have been, like industrial revolutions, educational revolutions. In the United States, school for all was a massive revolution, right? It came from the first industrial revolution, where now we realize we need an educated workforce. And then the next one, college, university for all across the United States. This is Memorial Hall at Harvard. The third educational revolution is learning anywhere with anyone, right? We are no longer bounded by geographical boundaries, we are bounded still with socioeconomic issues, access issues to technology, all of these things. But now we can pull apart the when and how and who. So I believe that honestly, the most successful schools in the world from this point forward are going to be hubs and networks, not the highest castles on the highest hills. It's not about resource acquisition anymore, where you say, I have all the knowledge, come to me, you will be the best. We have to act in a very collegial, interconnected way, which again, this looks a little similar to some of the other things we've seen over the last couple of days in terms of the noosphere. At Mid-Pacific, we are building not a bricks and mortar center, but a center for advancing education on the side. Think about, elementary, middle, high school, fourth campus is the center. Underneath the Center for Advancing Education are 3 academies. The first academy, Kupoho Academy, is the teaching side. Right now, we teach deeper learning to over 400 teachers a year, public schools, private schools, and charter schools. And it's all about really looking at how, again, we build a community. And how does that community act as a force multiplier to engage students in another way that says, you're part of this learning environment. You are not sitting and just receiving the information. This is one of the methods that we use, the Aspire method relative to aspirations. And again, part of what we try to do as hard as we possibly can is to make sure that we integrate the idea of technology, or we integrate the arts, or we integrate project-based learning for an outcome that is a positive outcome. And when we have a room full of teachers and we teach them how to create authentic projects that are standards-based and outcome measured, it means that they can go back to their classrooms and they can really engage students in a way that they hadn't been engaged before. And the reports over a number of years are that a teacher from 2 years in the profession to 22 years in the profession all come back and say, this was transformational. It was the opposite of the way that I was trained. And so when we work forward from that, the teaching side to the learning side, the Global Exchange Academy, our job and our goal is then to say, how might we develop an education system that reflects that same fourth industrial revolution, the third educational revolution? How can we take an experience and put it on a virtual platform, but for a hybrid solution? And a hybrid solution really means it's not just it's not a MOOC. It's not necessarily a Coursera or an edX kind of thing that just says, sign up, take it if you like, but edX and Coursera and other MOOCs also have the highest rate of attrition of any courses out there. So we want to find a way to offer the content while making it engaging and community-based. So when we look at these things, it's an extension of our school. And it's about any age. Can you do it elementary all the way up through adult? Some of our first courses were piloted. They were pretty good, but we're always tweaking them. We want to make them better because we're right at the very beginning. The first course that had equal student and adult participation was a cryptocurrency course. The adults who registered their students got so excited about it, they registered themselves. So now you've got all these different conversations happening in homes. And now we hear, okay, what's next? Which is a lot of what we're hearing in the last couple of days. We talk about the noosphere, but what's next? So when we talk about mastery, this is for us, I think, the big thing out of the Education Steering Committee. How do you apply what we're talking about right now? Yes, we can plant the seed. And David, you heard your point, right? There's the dandelion piece, which is important, but there's also the how do you do it? How do we empower people and how do we give them the tools to take action? Surrounded by the why, right? We need to understand why. And that growth mindset, the ability to connect skills, connect individuals, find solutions for future contexts, that is, I believe, a very fundamental element of what the noosphere is about, those collisions of communities and those collisions of ideas. So how do we become a force multiplier? This is a part of what we were talking about. How can one school in one island, on one island, in an archipelago, in the middle of a giant ocean, do all of these things. We come back to the center. If the center is simply a vehicle that says, we understand a couple things, and we've heard this over the last couple of sessions. One, content is king. You can deliver something and it can look really good, but if the content isn't there, that's a problem. The delivery system, right? The distribution system, the channels. We've heard about YouTube. We've heard about all these other different issues that we have. We need the right channels to deliver that content, and more importantly, the delivery itself. How do we scaffold the information from the theoretic all the way down to the practical, the granular, and do it in a way where the individuals, in this case K-12 students, feel empowered to understand what we're talking about, and then to say, I see myself in this, and then to say, I can do. That's where I believe we potentially have a solution. We have the teaching side with Kupaho Academy, 400 teachers a year. We have the learning side that is growing, Global Exchange Academy. And then I didn't talk about the Research Schools Academy in the middle because it doesn't pertain exactly what we're talking about. As a side note, the Research Schools Academy is an ongoing endeavor that we have on our campus. We've been partners with the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Research Schools International group for a while. They are now involved with the Human Flourishing program at Harvard, and we conduct research right on our campus. And when we take that research, the conclusions then turn into professional development, and then we grind that through the process and we make that into curriculum. So we have a double loop feedback on our campus. The point being, it happens in one school. This is only one school out of how many schools in the world? If schools can be hubs and networks, then those networks can conjoin and they can become influencers throughout the noosphere. So I would just say that to you, that ultimately, if this is the time for us to start thinking about how we deliver that content, and we heard about questions, okay, who do you have to do these things? Well, this is that call to action. Right? So my email is up there. If you have ideas about somebody who would like to be a teacher to learn and be part of this, this is the first piece, right? This is following the Kasira method, which is just, who do you know? Let's daisy chain. But the education group specifically is right now looking at these things. How do we know what we're talking about? So we're going to rely on the research side to give us what you believe are the fundamental components of the noosphere that we know have to be part of this conversation. And then on the education side, our job is to recruit designers, right? Educational designers who understand that curriculum then is broken down in a certain way and delivered for its audience and the audience's space. So this is my call to action for you. If you know somebody, throw that name on an email and send it to me, and I will create a spreadsheet, and we will try to make sure that we have as much information as possible. But we're at the beginning, right? We literally were formed in August, not very long ago. And because of this, we're just trying to put form to function.
You've been doing this a long time. What exactly is the form?
The steering committee. So form to function, right? And we talk about going slow to go fast. The point is that we have a good idea of where we want to go. And Ben's helping a lot, of course. You're going to hear from Martin next, who's a really good example of how you can take off and flourish. But we want to make sure that going slow piece is first, right? We want to make sure we understand what the game management is, so to speak, before the starting bell.
About 10 minutes for questions. If there are any comments.
Great, thank you. Marta?
I have a question. You are recruiting those teachers now with this call for action. What do you do with them? Is it like do you have already like a training? Do you have a process like how you work with those teachers now?
So a really good question. So in terms of the recruitment piece, remember so when I refer to the academies at our school, right? So there's the teaching and the learning side. On the teaching side, I think the thing that would be most helpful for us is that Kupu Ho Academy, and Kupu, by the way, Hawaii, Kupu, Kupu, is the Kupu Kupu fern, which is known as essentially the first sign of life in a lava field. It will grow in the most barren, desolate area. So Kupu Ho, to grow anew. Kupu Ho Academy is about teaching teachers to grow anew, to think differently, and to do something outside their comfort zones. So we would ask, potentially, if Ben says, yes, I will fund a Kupu Ho work session for the noosphere. So imagine 20 empty seats. The first recruitment piece is finding teachers who would be willing to learn how to teach about the noosphere, and then we would combine the content. So the second piece would be the individuals who want to create the content. So you're a content creator, Michael and Kimberly are content creators. All the individuals who have already done these things from Fordham and other schools and St. Mary's and Ellen and Sheila, that's the second line. Right? So we want to look at those two lines in particular because they would be force multipliers.
So if you've been training teachers in that for quite some time, it sounds like, you must have a very, very broad network for propagating innovation into school systems all over the world. Or is that, how large is that network of teachers who are your graduates essentially and connected with you?
So predominantly within Hawaii, we've worked in Japan, China, Korea, and in California as well. I would say the network overall is probably about 1,000 strong individuals who have come through, with most of those individuals actually coming back for a second round. You know, there's graded levels, higher levels as well. So we can easily go out to those individuals as well, and that's part of the plan. And that's where I would actually come back to our colleagues here and say, I would like not an elevator pitch, but I would like a concise description of exactly what it is that we are looking for to use the most efficient amount of time in recruiting teachers, to say, hey, we would like you to come join us. And here's exactly what we're going to do.
Question?
Yeah.
What about the kind of the flip side to the recruitment? There's been about recruiting the teachers. We've been talking a lot today about the well-being of students, and Sheila talked earlier about the well-being of teachers, particularly K through 12. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if there's a way of providing something for them in the workshop so that they're living the noosphere or whatever we decide comes out of our conversations today, so that then it's embodied, and then when they go back to their students, right? So part of what I'm thinking of is there's a program, I believe it's actually a national program. It's like a yoga teacher training for teachers, so that they learn how to learn yoga to get the experience, because it get into them, and then they pass on to their students. So I'm just kind of wondering if there's a way for us to think about the curriculum that way, so it feels not only that we're recruiting them, but then offering something that will inspire them to inspire their students.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's actually the method. The method is through deeper learning, that it's an engaged project-based kind of method itself that says that you are involved. And so those students then receive the ability to create a project based on a larger issue, a challenge that they have to solve, but they have to do it in groups. If we can figure out schools, so Marta School in Belgium, one school in Hawaii, literally circumnavigating the globe, if you can get two polar opposites geographically working together on the same problem, that's one example of exactly what you're talking about. If we can get enough schools in enough places with enough teachers and enough students, we can converge on a couple of challenges, and then the ability to really impact each other shows up. I agree. Is that a question? Yeah.
So it's so great what you're doing. My question is, how much are you actually yourself thinking about and
framing things in terms of noosphere concept? Do you yourself, use the word and the associated concepts in what you're developing?
We haven't, so no is the short answer. We haven't used the word or terminology associated with noosphere yet. I think yet is the operable sort of transition here. The easiest way to introduce this to both my faculty and to the students especially, I'll give you an example. We have a weekly chapel talk, elementary, middle, high school. It's all separate because of the sizes. So I would walk in, and I was talking to our middle school chapel last week. Last week's conversation was me talking about the essentially mapping the ethics of the trolley car problem onto AI and autonomous driving vehicles. Who's responsible? Who does these things? Am I, as the actor behind the wheel, not touching it, responsible? Is the CEO or the programmers, et cetera? I can connect all of those dots and then just simply introduce, oh, by the way, we're affected by this. And I don't want to say 100% of my students are there, but the majority are there. And then simply introduce the concept of the noosphere, and there would be a little bit of an aha moment followed by, tell me more. And then we start unpacking it.
But you managed to do something very noospheric without using the word noosphere.
Correct.
Would they know the name Teilhard?
If I introduced it to them, yes. All of this would be brand new.
Okay, all of this would be, so you make a lot of progress creating a noospheric system
Yes.
without the vocabulary.
Yes. And that's I would suggest that is one way of introducing this, right? Instead of, I think, Gregory, you had mentioned the difficulty at any age of thinking in a very wide abstract term and then finding where I live in that terminology versus saying, we're living this. It's happening, but now we can name it. And if you can name it, and then you can say you're not anonymous and you have action, that's very empowering. So this is where I think, the yes to Ben was an easy yes. First of all, I'd been Kasirid. But the other piece was, yeah, you know what? I see the framework that exists, and now we can actually give a little bit of identity to it.
I just wanted to say, I think it's a good idea that you're not introducing the term yet. I think you should kind of create an example for it, for like introducing the concept on a scale. It's more powerful.
So give the example that it's lived. There are certain things that we understand and know, and then start scaffolding up.
Yeah, exactly. You're creating this network, this noosphere, and it's like, it sounds like an amazing idea, and you're in the process of executing it. And people don't need to know the word immediately to be a part of it. And then when they do find out the word, they'll realize that they're a part of something bigger than what they thought.
Yeah, and isn't that the goal at the end of the day, right? For all of us to feel that we are a part of something larger than ourselves, that the sum is larger than that the whole thing is larger than the sum of its parts. So how are we, Sheila, for time?
We have 3 minutes till we need to start our next.
I'll take an excited David or Terry, whichever.
So Mike, I've been thinking of all of this. Does this translate to small town Oklahoma? Does this translate to inner city Oakland? I've had a close friend who taught at inner city Oakland where the students don't want to be there. There is something that can work. The question is, what makes your school incredible is, of course, its location, its people, its technology. This is not the world yet. How do we do this?
Well, so I'll give you a real world practical example. When I was still in Santa Ynez, right? So wine country, Santa Barbara County, if you're in California, right beside the city of Santa Barbara, very traditional community with very clear ideas of what education is and is not. The agriculture program there, Future Farmers of America, oldest FFA program in the state of California, was using GPS-driven tractors just experimenting, right? Just dabbling because it was just starting, and a hydroponic system that grew feed faster for sheep and was better ecologically. Those things were already happening. That's very noospheric. The GPS didn't come out of Santa Ynez. It clearly came from somewhere else. So the ability for us to say, regardless of where you live, if you're inner city Oakland or if you're somewhere in the prairies, is to say that the way you affect your community matters, the way your community affects its neighboring community matters, and then we start seeing ultimately, if we do a good job of storytelling, you say, there's a tapestry that we see on the front, right? But let's flip it over and let's see that we are actually all the threads. And when we do that, you give students the feeling of active agency. And once we do that, then really good things happen. It doesn't have to be this sort of stratospheric change the world, because that's overwhelming for many people. Instead, take this action in your neighborhood and make a difference. Actually makes a difference.